What is up, YouTube? This is Prince Pyramid, and we're back with another one. And to commemorate the fact that we just recently got our second Fallow Great One, I wanted to make the definitive guides for everybody, especially those on console, because the grind just feels a little bit different on console than PC. I want to make sure everybody understands the best way to make sure you put that great one in the lodge. So we're here on Tay. This is where we've done all our grinds, including the red deer, but today we're going to focus on the fallow deer. So let's get into it. All right, guys, so the first thing that we need to cover is actually the meat and potatoes of doing a great one grind, and that is finding all of your zones. Right now we're on a hot spot for fallow deer. So this lake right here is one of my main shooting lakes, and I think, let's see if they're in their zone yet. They're not. All right, that's fine. So right now we don't have our fallow in our zones, but this lake will consistently have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and sometimes you get a sixth one here. I probably just shot that zone out, but this to me is one of the top lakes when it comes to finding your zones. We're also not too far into their drink time, so we'll stay here for a minute and see if they come in. All right, I hear ducks, but I don't see the fallow. But let's cover some zones. So, like I said, this lake is one of my main shooting lakes. So if you're doing it like a lot of people suggest doing it, where you want to have your main lakes that you want to shoot at, this lake right here and these two lakes here, there's a reason why we have the tent here. These two lakes here, you can shoot that zone out 1,000 times and they're always going to come back here. I guarantee it. Same with this right here. The main thing is, guys, you see these mountains? Okay, fallow that are on this side have to drink down here. They cannot drink above these mountains. You could then draw a line, right? Like right here, more mountains. They cannot drink above that. So there's only so many places fallow can even drink. And because of that, you can blow the zones up and not have to worry about it. But I will say this right here, this lake and these two, these are your main shooting lakes. Now, secondary lakes or secondary places you may want to hit. This lake right here, at first was a big time lake for me. I ended up shooting it down, but you definitely need to visit this lake. And this coast here, you see the tent placement? This tent placement is almost strictly to make this less annoying to have to run it. But you need to run from right here, at the edge of the map here, because sometimes you'll get a drink zone. You need to run from here all the way here. Cover that entire coast, because there will be fallow that drink down there. The other place up here, this is the starting outpost, I believe. You're going to have fallow that are here, right on the coast again. And that coast will go all the way around here. So you will have fallow all on this coast. This is actually the zone where I killed my first great one right here. And I have this tent here because the other thing you're going to have to run is this river. Now, what I would suggest is if you can eliminate the zones on either this coast or this river, when I say eliminate, shoot down the zones to where there's only 2s and 3s in that zone, so you don't have to worry about it too much. You can just leave them there. You want to shoot these down and this down. If at all possible, you'd like to have this lake, and this lake available as your main shooting lakes. The other location, as we talked about the coast, the river, these lakes, the only other thing you're going to have to check, and this is what I would say is the only lake you should consider an exterior lake. This right here. This right here always has fallow at it. It's like the only zone that's in these two. I've never seen fallow drink here, but this right here is the one place where you're going to have to check. And what I would do is I'd start at this lake and I would shoot down the fallow until you only have 1s and 2s here, and then forget about it. because this is the one place that's just kind of out of the way. The rest of this, you know, you can start here, run this lake, go to this tent, run here, hop from the tents, do this coast. You can run this coast all in one run. You can run the river in one run, and you can hit this lake all in one run. This right here is one that you should do your best to forget. But as you can see, we have most of our zones. That's one. You'll have several on the river and all along this coast. You'll have probably 6 to 7 drink zones here. You're going to have probably 6 to 7 total drink zones along this coast. 2 to 3 drink zones here. We have our 2 here. And then sometimes you get one right here. And then this lake is always good for about 4 to 5 zones. So once you have established your zones, that's when you can start laying down the tents. And that's what we'll get into next. So the first thing I think we should cover for this guide is going to be the tent placement. And for a lot of people, they'll say you should put tents where their zones are at and then a shooting zone. That's a super efficient way to do it. But if you're on a budget, this is a viable method. I have killed 2 great ones, both of which were relatively short amount of time. And it's basically just using tents to shorten your runs. So as you can see, I have a tent here. And this tent, pretty much you can travel here and you're shooting down on these zones. I have a tent here so that you can shoot to this zone and then run this. Basically, you want to use tents, for me, to eliminate this coast and make it less of a chore. Because for whatever reason, this right here is my least favorite part to run when I'm doing a Great One grind for Fallow. So make sure you space your tents out well so that you don't have a problem with being able to go to these zones even if they're on the outer parts of the coast. The other part I would suggest, I put this tent, and this tent really could not be here, but it feels like it shortens this just enough to where it's not annoying. And this was a pretty hot lake when I first started my grind. So for me, this tent was necessary. I could probably pull it up now, but then again, like, why bother? This tent I placed so that I could run, again, this coast is a big deal. This coast, so both of my grinds, I was basically focusing on my main shooting lakes and avoiding this coast. And the minute I started hitting this coast fairly hard is when the Great One showed up. So for me, make sure you use these tents. You don't have to like put tents every 200 meters like some people do. You can, but what I like to do is just use it to where running this coast is less of a chore. The other place I put tents, right here. So this is about the midway point for me when I'm running the river. So I can come here and I can shoot across this and shoot anything that's over here, because you usually have 2 to 3 zones for fallow here. And then you're going to get fallow that'll be here and here. This to me covers that. You could also do these, but you can take these from this tent. This tent will really help you not have to feel like, it doesn't feel like you're running forever, because once you're here, you're only a few meters away from this zone, and then you can run the rest of it. And you also have fallow drink zones here, here. These are red deer. That says red deer, but I blew that zone out not too long ago. And finally, the last place I like to put my tent when I'm doing a Great One grind is here. Because if you don't know, I mentioned it earlier, but these twin lakes are the perfect place to take at least 4 to 5 males out of the way. So if you do want to put a tripod up, I don't really mess with tripods too much because, like I said earlier, a lot of these zones you can blow up and they're going to come right back. But if you were going to put a tripod up, I'd put it probably right in the middle here, or maybe right there. But I put this tent here so that I don't have to run all the way from here to here. So basically, I come to this and I run this coast here. This tent helps me run this coast here. These tents along here cover the coast. And then for my twin lakes, I have this tent right here. All right, guys, the last thing I think we should cover is what weapons you want to use for the grind. So for me, the thing I would consider the most is using the 300. Now, you don't want to use the 300 on trophies like rares and diamonds, but the 300 is without doubt the easiest gun to grind with. It will pretty much take down a fallow even if you just hit flesh in just a couple seconds. So you should definitely think about using the 300 on your grind, and especially nowadays where you don't have to grind for the canning. You can actually just, if you have the modern weapons pack or the I think it's modern, maybe high caliber rifle pack. But if you have that, then you can just use the Arzina. And I mean, it's without doubt the best grinding weapon for anything, whether it's red deer or fallow. And then the question is, what are you most comfortable with? So for my first fallow, I actually used a pistol, the 243. Let me see if I can find that 243. This thing. So it can be scoped in rifle and it shoots a 243, but it forces you to get closer to the fallow than you may otherwise have done with a rifle. So you don't take big chances, which is what I wanted. I didn't want to mess up the shot, so we used the 243 on the first one. If I can fix that. All right, there we go. All right, so the other thing you can use, and what I used for my second fallow deer, was the 30-06. And I would also just give a shout out to the 270. The 270 and the 30-06 are the weapons I would use for most of my diamonds. Besides the 243 pistol I used on my first great one, my second one I used the 30-06. And for most of that grind, if it was a diamond, I actually used the 270 Warden, just because I have a Remington 270 in real life that looks so similar to that. So I think it's just one of the best looking guns in the game. So that's what I would use. But again, you just want something that's good for class 4, but you probably want something with more knockdown power. So something like a Warden, the 270, it's good from 1 to like 8 or 9. Same with the 30-06. If you feel comfortable, you can try with the 243, but you want something with more knockdown power, and you definitely want that 300. It'll make the grind so much easier. All right, guys, I think we're going to wrap it up with just a few facts on the fallow grind that may help you. So obviously, when we're doing a grind, you always want to hit them during their drink time. So for fallow deer, the drink time is going to be 10 to 13. So you want to hit those zones I showed you guys between 10 and 13. Probably set your time around 11:30. That way they'll already be in their zone and you won't have to do any waiting. So on top of that, the other thing you want to look for is, if you were looking for diamonds, the number is 250. So let me give you an example of a big boy fallow. So 250 is on the smaller side of diamonds. That's a 270, and that's a 267. So both of those are pretty good sized fallow deer, especially that guy. You don't find too many 270s. But again, you're looking for 250. They will troll you. There are even guaranteed trolls at level 5. So be on the lookout for that. The other thing I think to talk about is the different variations. You're going to have 3 rares. Piebald, which is rare, but not nearly as rare as albino and melanistic. Like in the fallow grind lodge, I actually have, I think, 2 piebald huddles. So they're not that rare, but you will come across albino and melanistic, and they are a lot more rare. The other variants are the different great ones. So in front of me right now, we got our fabled hooded that we took out last, and then before him, we had a fabled mocha. So fallow deer also have the fabled painted variant, the fabled silver variant, and the fabled golden variant. And I do believe that's it. Gold, silver, and painted is what's left. On top of that, they also have different rack variations. So the one that you don't see here, this is a blade rack, and this is the spoon rack. The other option would be the Irish elk rack. So it's also a very nice looking rack. It's kind of more similar to this one than this one. It just goes more straight back instead of up like this one does. So you're gonna run across that. One of them's actually in the thumbnail for the video. I recommend looking them up. You know, you get to make a wish. Hopefully, whichever great one spawns is the one you want. If not, hey, you're gonna get over it because you finally got a great one. But I think this is where we're gonna wrap it up, guys. So this has been the ultimate guide on how to get your Fallow Great One, and I've been Prince Pyramid. I really hope this guide helps. I really hope you guys find your great ones. If you do, make sure you say in the comment how long it took you and what kind you got, and make sure you hit that subscribe button. But until next time, guys, everybody, have a good one.